Welcome to the Celebration of You. I'm your host, Holly Dowling. I'm thrilled to share with you incredible people from all over the world who are living and leading extraordinary lives. From overcoming immense adversity to discovering the secret sauce to leading with courage and grace. Their stories are going to bring you hope and inspiration. Now, let the stories begin. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another incredible episode of Celebration of You. And you know, I get goosies, and sometimes I cry, and sometimes we laugh. I mean, we'll just go through all the gamuts. Today's guest is especially special. Was that? Yeah, I could say that. That was like two run-ons, but I'm going to say it anyways. Because I'm about to introduce you to somebody that, unbeknownst to me, I got to be interviewed by this amazing, brilliant woman for a show that many of you know. I'm very, very passionate about my daily ritual and my spiritual side of my life, and I share that a lot. And one of the most important things that ever happened in my life that's had a sustaining impact, and it's a daily ritual, is a devotional I read, Jesus Calling. And so I got the privilege and beyond honored to be a guest on the Jesus Calling podcast, and the producer, the amazing woman behind the scenes doing all this, is the person I'm going to interview today. So without further ado, hi, Laura.
Oh, Holly, thanks for having me.
Oh, girlfriend, I'm so excited. And just to let everybody know, yes, you are the brilliant producer. You produce several podcasts, and I can't wait for you to share your background in the entertainment business. But I just want to make sure that everybody knows your full name is Laura Neutzling, and she is currently the producer of several shows. So Laura, where do we start, my love, right?
Oh, gosh. I don't know how far back you want to go.
We're going to go back. We're just going to do it. But let's start with, tell us right now, like currently in your world, I kind of just shared, right? What one of the shows you're producing. Tell us about what you're doing in your current world and what you're passionate about. Give us a little thing on Laura right now.
As we have talked about, we just had a little pre-conversation about work and career, and so much of what I do is really, I dive into my work, and producing these podcasts has been really a labor of love. I've worked with several lovely clients and have gotten to build out just wonderful platforms for them in an emerging market, as you know, being in the podcast world yourself. And so I spend a lot of time with that. I live in Sarasota, Florida with my husband, and I was a late in life person to get married, which is sort of an interesting side fact, but I was 49 when I got married for the first time. And that kind of blew up my life and sort of changed everything. And it was a big risk it's like I did all the things that they tell you not to do. At the same time, I got married, I moved, I quit my job, I started a business. All the things that are the high stressors, I just decided to bundle them all into one thing. So, but we live here, and we've been here for 4 years and married for 4 years. And I travel a lot for business and for pleasure. That's one of my passions. And I have a great family, both by marriage and by my own family. And I have 5 nephews and a niece. And we are very deliberate about being an aunt and uncle to them and being very involved in their lives. And so I have a lot going on in addition to my work. I love it.
And, I just have to, I'm sitting here smiling because when you said I did everything at once, you did everything that you're supposed the high stressors, like you said. I love that you waited till you're 49. And by the way, caveat, married for the first time. Because how many people at that age can say that's their first marriage?
Right.
How did you know? I mean, I didn't even know I was going to go here, but how did you know he was the one at that point in your life?
Well, it's really interesting because I feel like I could write a book on my relationships. And a lot of women probably feel that way, but I just had some really, really interesting relationships. And I probably was very bad at relationships, to be honest. And so some of my relationships have a lot of, learning that came from them, a lot of education. And so I always wanted to be married. I always wanted to be in a relationship. That was more important to me actually than a marriage, just to have a partner, and have someone to share life with. And I think that's a desire of a lot of women. And it drove me for a while. And then I kind of got serious about it because career drove me. in my 20s and my 30s. And then I kind of looked at the clock and was like, oh, hey, I'm 35 and I'm not married. And so I sort of got serious about dating in my 40s. I didn't date much in my 30s because I was climbing the corporate ladder and was a VP and was just like, oh, wait, I'm not married. What's going on? And so I started, a series of relationships, and I had dated in my 20s and teens and stuff like that, but didn't really start like, oh, I should probably make this a deliberate thing to try to find somebody. And that had its foibles.
Nice word. And love that.
Had to examine why that was so important to me. And so then I think because, I was getting into some pretty toxic relationships, I decided to go to therapy and just go, hey, why do I always land in these toxic relationships, And so I, through therapy, discovered, things about my upbringing and my past and my family of origin and all of that, informed probably why I was choosing these toxic relationships. And I'm a huge advocate of therapy, and I think it really helped point me in the right direction. I'm one of those people that takes things for a while to soak in. So this was a multi-year process. I'd learn things in therapy, and then they would show up 2 or 3 years later, and I'd be like, oh, I'm doing what she told me to do 3 years ago.
You're like, oh, it makes sense now.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so I got healthier, and then I shifted my priorities. And one big thing for me was I could not hold in two places: the desire to get married and accepting my singleness. And so I was always praying, God, take away the desire for me to get married. Obviously it's not going to happen. I'm in my 40s. Just take it away. I just want to be completely content. And I heard loud and clear at some point, hey, you can have the desire to be married. You can have the desire to be in a relationship, and you can be a happy single person. Those two can coexist. And so when I learned that, it was life-changing for me, because I was like, all right, I'm going to pour myself into my life right now and do things that are super helpful. That are super, things I want to do. And even though, sometimes the answer to the question, what do you want to do with your life? Well, I want to be in a relationship. I had to put that one aside and go, okay, what else do you want to do? And so I'm going to go pursue those things aside from career. And that's when I really started to blossom and grow. And I'm a late bloomer by admission. And so blooming in my 40s, I think led to me meeting the right person. And so I was pursuing things that were, important to me. I got involved in things that I had never been involved with before. I started working on a book for some friends, telling their life story. And that's actually how I met my husband. I was working on this book, and I had to go take a trip to do an interview, to find out more about this story. And he was a part of the interview.
Wow. Seriously. Yeah. Okay, wait, we have to pause, because I am covered in a little bit of goosies, and I'm going to say this because there's going to be people that are listening that truly can relate. It's amazing how many women in my life, whether it's a colleague or a client or a friend, or everybody becomes friends, had the same almost identical story, Laura. I had a dear friend not too long ago say, I'm turning 50 and I don't know where my life went. I thought I was going to be, I used to think I wanted to be like the soccer mom and do all that. She goes, but I got into a career. Next thing you know, she's 28 years in a career, VP of a global company. And it's like she realized, I'm not married. I have no kids. What, and it's and yet what's fascinating about this, and I don't want anybody to miss this, is I love that you were very transparent in saying, I used to pray, God, take this away from me. And I think sometimes it's about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
We tend to pray for things that we think we're begging God to do for us. And really, in the biggest picture of life, what God really wants us to do is surrender and trust, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of that for me was, recognizing that our feelings, although can be deceiving sometimes, and they can rule our hearts, they're real. And if we choose to press them down and ignore them, then we get sick inside, because we're not acknowledging something that's absolutely real. And that desire that I had to be in relationship wasn't a bad desire. It was from God, And I think that, again, I think we can have those longings and desires, and maybe they never are fulfilled, but the longing and the desire is not wrong in itself. Unless, it's something that's hurting other people or whatever. Right. But this was just, a true longing and desire to be in a relationship. But if I'd let it consume my life, which I did for many years, then it becomes something that's not helpful. And, and I think that when I could see that we are very complicated people, we have layers, and that, there may be things we want for our lives that we will never get, but it's okay to want them,
Yeah.
And I think that, the spiritual component of that is that God's good. And I don't think marriage is the pentultimate. Like, I didn't finally arrive, like, yay, I made it. All y'all single girls, you can too. I got to the point of, I'm okay to be single. I want to be married. I want that relationship. It had a lot of mystery to me. Like, how does someone get chosen? And, I just had a lot of stuff around it, but when I became okay with, this is my life right now, and I'm going to improve it as it is in the present right now, then, that's where I feel like my heart needed to be. And if I had never gotten married, I think I'd still be a lot happier than I was, and so that's what I would encourage people. Marriage is not the pentultimate. It's not the you finally arrive, now you can rest,
Right.
I hate the language. A lot of us are called to be single. But I think sometimes it can be a choice. Sometimes it's just how life shakes out. But I think we can all be happy with where we are. As long as we are following what God wants us to do, and also just being really honest and authentic with him about our desires and our feelings.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating too is I believe that as I'm listening to you, right, I totally agree. Marriage is not an end all or be all. It's not like the pinnacle of now it's, now you've achieved something. And the beauty of this, if you think about this, Laura, I mean, how many people can say, right, that yes, you went to therapy, and see, I believe in therapy big time. You saved yourself from multiple marriages and divorces.
I did.
Right? Yeah.
It's so funny you say that, because I've always, for a while I was kind of a bitter single chick, like, here's another wedding shower. Here's another baby shower. I must have gone to 1,000. And, I'm like, nobody's given me gifts for not getting pregnant before getting married, or not getting 5 divorces. I'm not getting a party,
a divorce party.
I mean, that's a very bitter thing to say. That's just being honest. But, I do feel like that my heart was preserved in a lot of ways. And I could see that, because when I would be in these toxic relationships, I would always get to the point with that person where I would be like, do I really, is this a person I could see myself? There'd be something in the relationship that would happen, and I would feel like, oh my gosh, this pivotal point is where I have to think about being with this person for the rest of my life. And I can't, and I was okay to be in it in the moment and try to make it work. And I think that was a big thing for me too, was like a project for me.
Right. Oh, and yeah.
I really woke up and was like, oh, wow. Oh, I'm tied to this person in a way that I don't want to be tied. And then I would end up breaking up with them. But I do feel like that was God prompting me, no, this is not for you, so I do feel like I was saved a lot of heartbreak. I could have gotten married young, I could have done all those things. Not that there's anything wrong with that when you're with the right person. And, but I think that I, again, being a late bloomer, I think God knew exactly what he was doing. And I needed to have a lot of different life experiences before I got married.
And I'm going to add to that, I think, because, I shared with you when you interviewed me about, being in a couple of very toxic relationships, a very abusive relationship, right? And had I had, I don't live in my past. I don't live going, I wish I had or done this, but just to have the wherewithal or to have the spirit, you knew enough to say, you saw the red flags, and it was like something greater than you. It was God and the angels, right? Kept you from walking into all of these multiple, it would have been failed marriages, right? And having to keep you from living through some very toxic situations. And just because we're talking about that, this is fascinating. So I have to tell you that today, I'm kind of on this roll right now where I'm doing these rant and raves where I just share something that I'm just very passionate about. And the timing is so serendipitous that we're talking, because I just did one on emotional vampires and how important it is to be very aware of the people we spend our time with, especially discretionary time, right? Do people lift you up, or do they deplete the life out of you? Because people can be very toxic. And I don't mean to say that they do it intentionally either. That's the other thing. It's right. It's not about pointing fingers. I also challenged people to look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you an emotional vampire,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
How are you showing up to the world? I mean, are people like, so it's just so funny. We're talking toxic, and I want to take you past, let's go to the past now, because the fact that you just shared, thank goodness and for God above that you got some therapy. Take me back to your younger self. Maybe it was, early childhood, maybe it was elementary, high school, college, whatever that was for you. Where was, or maybe one of the more pivotal moments in your life that, and you look back and you go, wow, if it wasn't for that, maybe it was extreme adversity. Maybe, it could have been a great time. It could have been a really tough time. But that you can look back and go, wow, that was really pivotal. And maybe you didn't realize it then, but it made you the amazing person you are today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, it's so funny because I can think of two things that come to mind, and one has to do with a passion and one has to do with people. I think from a very young age, I loved music. And I threw myself into music, listening to it. I was a child of the 70s. And so I had my little radio. It was a clock radio that I plugged in, and I would make tape recordings of my favorite songs. And so I made early mixes on cassette tapes. And, I sang all the time. And, I started singing little solos in school in like 5th or 6th grade. And I was a very, very, very shy. I know it's so funny because I always hear people that seem very gregarious say they were shy, and I'm always like, whatever.
Right. And yet listen to me. I'm listening to you going, you were shy?
Right, I know. And so, but I really was. I was very shy. I had, not a lot of self-esteem, not a lot of confidence. And I always try to crack where that comes from. And, again, therapy helps us find that out. But it is interesting because there's no matter if you're the most beautiful kid on earth, but if you still have low self-esteem and, you deal with those demons for whatever reason, it's going to hold you back to an extent. And so I was super shy, and, we moved a lot. I was in a military family. So we moved quite a bit, and we landed in Texas, and I was in middle school. And I remember, I had sung a lot in my previous school. And so didn't know a soul, used to eat lunch by myself every single day in 7th grade, just sat in the breezeway of our school and would have my little sack lunch, and didn't know anybody for an entire year.
Oh man.
And I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And so
it is, it's making me sad. I mean,
yeah,
seriously.
it was sad. Yeah. It was really sad. And so I decided, because music and singing was the one thing that I felt like I could shine at. I auditioned for the talent show. And I sang, and it was an old song from a Broadway musical called Godspell. It's called Day by Day. Mm-hmm. And so I sang that song, and then got a huge response. And then the next day, people started talking to me, Mm-hmm. And so music has always been this way for me to connect with people. And so I didn't instantly overnight make friends, but I was in the choir at school, and I'll never forget this, but I was sitting next to this girl, and we started talking, and she just, started asking me questions. And I'm like, who is this girl? She must be crazy.
Nobody talks to me. I eat alone.
Exactly. And so she started talking to me, and then she just kind of adopted me and under her wing. And it was the first time that I, was in a situation, because, elementary school was fine. I had friends. I went to a private Christian school, and it was great. And then I get in this new situation, and I felt completely like left fish out of water. I didn't know how to dress. I didn't know how to, it was just bad. And so she kind of took me under her wing and became my friend. And then as I got to know her, I made more friends. But I always feel like you talked about earlier, God uses, whether it's angels or promptings of your spirit, but I think he uses people to come into your life and show you, hey, I see something in you. I think you're, worthy. And so it's always been someone that just kind of like saw a spark in me or was moved to talk to me or whatever. And so that, got me through the rest of, middle school and high school. And I came out of my shell a lot more, and I sang a lot more, and became really serious about that. And, I worked in a Christian bookstore for my late teens and 20s. And so I got to know a lot of Christian music artists, because we were quite a big store in San Antonio, Texas. And so I got to know a lot of Christian music artists and work in that world. And then I was a soloist at my church, and I sang at a big mega church. And so I was kind of coming along as, a singer and someone who was really immersed in the entertainment business for my city, and at least on the Christian side. And that led to me getting a job at a Christian music company in Nashville. And so I moved in 1996 and started my career there.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know what I love? And I don't want anybody to miss this, Laura. That one, I got goosies as you were telling this, because that one girl that sat down and started talking to you, you could probably, if I took you back to that moment, you would remember where you were sitting. You could probably remember what you were wearing.
I do.
You see? Isn't it amazing?
I was wearing tough skin jeans from Sears.
I remember Sears. That's where my parents used to take us to shop.
I did not know how to dress to save my life because I'd always worn a uniform in school. And so when I moved, and my mom, bless her heart, she had too much else going on. I had a brand new baby brother who's 11 years younger than me. And so she was dealing with an infant, while I'm starting middle school, one of the hardest things to do, for kids. And so, she wasn't too interested in helping me get my fashion game on. And so, you're right. You remember exactly where you are. You remember that kindness, and you hope, that you can replicate that for somebody. But I've had it extended to me so often. And I admire the people that just go, I'm going to go make a friend today, and how that just impacts your life in such a big way. It can change the trajectory of a life, honestly.
It really can. And that young woman at that age, right? Like how many kids at that age even sense and think like she knew she was drawn to come talk to you. She sensed something.
Yeah.
And now crazy question. Do you remember her name?
Cheryl Whipple.
I love that name. Do you ever reach out to her and try to find her?
I haven't talked to her probably in 30 years.
Okay. So I'm going to challenge you. Wouldn't it be cool if you could track her down? Now there's enough ways between LinkedIn and social media, and let her know how much she meant to you in that day.
Well, actually, it's so funny because I told her that because we stayed friends for many years. And I did tell her, I was like, she was just like, I just felt, she goes, I felt bad for you because I noticed that you never talked to anybody and nobody paid attention to you. And she goes, and so I just thought, I'll talk to you. And then when I did, I loved how funny you were. And I loved, your spirit, she said, I would have never known that about you, if I hadn't talked to you. She goes, so I benefited too. I got a friend that was awesome,
Oh.
So we did get a chance to kind of have that conversation because I did express, wow, that really meant a lot to me that you did that. You're the first person in this school that took notice of me in a year,
And you can remember her. Look, I love that you remember her name first and last, right? I love this. And
she was one of those girls that just, she wasn't like the super popular girls, but everybody knew her and loved her. She was just that great girl that, Cheryl, we know Cheryl, she just fit in with everybody and she's wonderful. I've got a picture of her somewhere from high school.
Oh, look at you. I love that. Well, and it's just so funny because and it's really not, I don't want to say funny. It's so neat. And I think that if anybody listening, right, like I'm on this mission, and I think you and I talked about it the last time we chatted, I feel like we have a global epidemic, and this epidemic is we are emotionally malnourished. I think so much of what's happening in our world is coming from human beings feeling so insignificant, unloved, unappreciated, right? And so in a moment like this, that you can go back to 30 years ago or over 30, I didn't mean to say it like that. That came out like, over 30
years ago. No, okay.
No, that was so funny. You're like, all right, Holly, did you have to say it quite like that?
It's been a long time.
Yeah. That one person can make such a difference. And I would want everybody listening, take the challenge, right? Take 2 challenges. Actually, listening to Laura, has this rekindled in you somebody in your past that believed in you, that made you feel important or significant? Why wait? Why not tell somebody? Maybe you haven't talked to them in 10, 20, 30 years. Just let them know. Track them down on social media. My goodness, let's turn it into something good, right? Like use it for a positive. Let somebody know how much they mean to you. And the second challenge is be the person. Be that person to let somebody know how much they mean to you. And, I don't know about you, Laura, but I think sometimes, especially in the world we're both in, where we are about, empowering people and celebrating people and helping, you help produce these amazing shows. And yet sometimes the people that need to hear from us the most are the people that are closest to us that we're not, true. Right?
Yeah. And I think that, like you said, that challenge, I think, just produces such a positivity in us, and not only does it bless the other person for you to go back and thank somebody that had, an impact on your life, but to be that person. I think we do spend a lot of time staring at our navels and going, why do I do this? And what's the problem here? And why did that person do that? Instead of just kind of taking action and, like you said, being that person to be an impact on someone else's life. And then, man, what returns back to you is so healing and so, positive and just, again, can put your life on a different path,
Totally. And you never know the gift you might give somebody at the timing. It's always a divine timing too.
Yes.
To give somebody that gift. Now, I can't leave this hanging because I'm kind of excited. So I know you've been, and I want everybody to know, like you were big time. You were VP of marketing for Warner Brothers Music, right? And you've done a lot of amazing things. Did you ever get to sing? Like you had this passion for singing. Did you use your voice when you went to Nashville, or did you go right into the business side of things? What?
Well, it's so funny because my self, deprecation and my image of myself, I love to sing. And I sang a lot in San Antonio, where I'm from, originally. And, I sang in buku weddings. I led a worship ministry out at a major Air Force base, Lackland Air Force Base. I was the worship minister out there for several years, and which was also a stretch for me, being a little bit of a shy person, because I had to speak. I couldn't just sing. I had to speak too. I had to lead a choir, and I had to, it was a stretch. But yeah, I did. I got to use my voice there, and then when I moved to Nashville, I moved strictly for business reasons. I was not interested in getting into the music industry as a vocalist, mostly because I didn't believe I could. It was too competitive and it was too much, so I was going to be happy to help other musicians. And, so when I took my job there, I got involved with, some singing, because when you work at a record company, usually there's something going on that's like, who can sing? We need some backup session vocalist or choir or whatever. So you get dragged in and you do it. And then I also joined a church there, and it was a pretty large church. And my music minister at my previous church whispered in the ear of this music minister and said, you may want to use Laura for some solos. And so he did. And so I was on several of their recordings that they sold at Christmas time and did studio recording there. And so, yeah, I still got to use my voice a lot, never really professionally, but I got to sing, in some significant ways during my time in Nashville. And again, I think that I look back now and I go, man, if I had, it's so funny. And I'll use this as an example because if you watch American Idol,
yeah,
you see people that audition and they have this immense confidence, but they're terrible.
I know, right?
But they have all the confidence in the world. And I've actually seen very mediocre musicians who have a ton of confidence go far because they have confidence and they're willing to take a risk and they're willing to put themselves out there. And I wasn't. I was not. To an extent, I would put myself out there because I knew what I was capable of, but I wasn't so confident. I was like, I don't have the image. I don't have this. I don't have that. And I couched it to myself as being realistic. And I think that, maybe, and I don't have regret about this because I've gotten to do so many wonderful things in music. But if I was to look back and go, if I had had more confidence in myself and if I had had, a little more wherewithal, I could have probably done something in music. That wasn't my path and that's okay. But I don't know. I just encourage people to, not always listen to those voices in your head that tell you you're being practical, that, that little dream you have inside of you may not have credence because of XXXX, And so anyway, I'm glad you asked that question because I really did get to have, a wonderful time in music while I was in Nashville. And then just being in the music industry was a blast because I just got to be around so many artists that I admired and work with them and help promote them and, go to all the shows and just be involved in a way that was very significant.
And I love that we just went down that path because I have no idea where we were going to go. You had no idea where we were going to go. And you can hear it in your voice. You're like lighting up. There's this energy and this beautiful energy. And it's so interesting because earlier today, I always just love these moments that happen. I was asked an opinion around the difference between why do I believe optimism is so important and the difference between being an optimist and a realist. And you just said, right? I was like, wow, is that powerful? And that's
really powerful. And you're making me think about that because I always, really, prided myself on that, I'm a realist, and I'm not going to be like all these other people that are handing their demos off to people just willy-nilly, because I think that's gross, And I'm just like, but one of those people might pick up a demo one day, and that's their dream. So I shouldn't poo-poo it. But I think sometimes we safeguard ourselves with that notion of realism,
Totally.
And those other people are going, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that something's going to pan out, And so, my therapist used to say, you defray hope, because you don't want to be hopeful because you hate being disappointed.
Ooh, so that was like a guard. That was your defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Right? That way you won't ever have to face being disappointed. If you just eliminate and be very realistic and eliminate the hope. Ooh, that's a powerful, profound statement.
It really is. Yeah. It showed a lot about me, like the walls that I put up to prevent myself from failing, because failing is something I have a really hard time with. We all do, but
absolutely. Yeah.
I would put roadblocks into place because of that fear. So,
and probably has a lot to do with, metaphorically, even in your personal world of, I mean, you can see when now it's easy once we're older and we can reflect back and go, wow, if that wasn't the writing on the wall, right? I was doing it in both sides of my life, career and personal. It's fascinating, Laura, because I have to ask you, it's so timely right now as we wrap this up. Go back to that younger self, maybe 21, somewhere between 21 and 25. Okay. And, if you were to give that younger self of yours advice based on everything you've just shared, everything all the experiences you've had, even your philosophy about being realistic, right? Based on who you are today and what what advice would you give your younger self?
So that's such a good question. It's so funny because I can think of all kinds of advice to give my kid self, but my 20 self, that's hard. I think in my 20s, I hung on to things longer that were toxic. I was really not quick to change. I was afraid of change. I lamented, in my 20s where I was at the same job, doing the same thing for several years. And I could see people in my 20s moving off and going off and doing cool things. And they would come back and I would still be where I was, And I think I probably would have just told myself to take a risk, to get out there sooner, to not cling to safety and security as tightly, or what my version of safety and security was, because it wasn't really safe and secure. It was just my, notion of what that was. Mm-hmm. So I would just have told myself, break a few barriers, take a few risks. It took me till I was almost 30 before I did that.
Mm. And just think about, I just have to tell you that, if you think about what you just shared, and you just had so much wisdom that just poured out of you. And I don't even know if you realize this. So when you listen to this, and I want everybody to know that I just got to experience the incredible Laura, who is behind the scenes, producing shows, has done hundreds of interviews. And today was the first time you've been interviewed, right?
That's correct. I can't even think of another time I've been interviewed besides a job interview. I don't know if I've ever been interviewed for an article or anything, because I'm always the one doing the interviewing or writing the story or putting other people on stage or whatever. So it's yes. You are.
I'm sitting here clapping because you're amazing. I'm sitting here going, you're an incredible person to be interviewed, and you just poured so much beauty and wisdom and grace, and you got real. And I'm like, how is this possible? And I'm feeling so grateful. I'm looking up as though I'm looking at God right now. I'm saying thank you for allowing me this gift of having you.
You are a fantastic interviewer, and it's very easy to talk to you, and that's a gift. Mm-hmm. And I think that you listen well, and I had, it's a pleasure to talk to you. So take that there for your celebrating you today.
Well, look at you. You just turned this show around. Look at you go, girl. You're you're like, ooh, I love it. Celebrate you today. Oh, I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for this new incredible friendship that I truly believe we were brought together by God, for ways we couldn't even have imagined. And for anybody listening, Laura, if they want to learn more about you, you have an amazing business. You left the corporate world, 4 years ago? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And no pun intended, 4Eyes Media. Why did you pick that word, by the way, before we wrap this up? Where did that come from?
I brainstormed with a really good friend about a name for my business. And actually, I had this business on the side starting in 2008. And I just had it for like some writing projects and things I was doing. And so we were just kind of like, what's iconic about me? And what's, what do people think? I've worn glasses since the 6th grade, and I, always change them up, and they're different styles. And we just thought 4 eyes, that kind of belies, like kind of a nerd a little bit, and also somebody that could be creative. And so we really liked that. And so, we looked up domain names, and we thought it would be cute to make it like 4 eyes, I media. And then the eyes represent different things that we do, inspiration and, those types of words that go with it. Acronym, getting really cute on the marketing side.
I love it. I love it.
But yeah, that's how I came up with that name.
Oh my God. I just had to know. And now I have the visual. And on top of that, by the way, I now have the visual of you in middle school with the glasses on and eating lunch by yourself every day. So I'm going to get rid of and now you're this blooming person that you waited till you were almost 50 to just shed everything, right? And you're like, I got married. I left the corporate world. I started my job. And so, I have this, I don't know if I told you this when we talked last, but I have this dream to start a whole nother show called It's Never Too Late to Dream Again, because people are always blown away. They think that when you hit 50, it's over. It's done.
It's such a start, man.
I know. I think we have a project in front of us. What do you think?
I'm willing to partner with you on this one, man. I think that I do. I feel like, every era for me has been full of growth and learning. And, but I think at 50, you have this wealth of life experiences and wisdom. And for some people, I think, it's like, oh gosh, I'm this far from retirement or closer to retirement or closer, how could I start over? How am I relevant? And it's just possible. And you hear stories about it all the time. And I think telling those stories would be so encouraging to people, because I do feel like people feel stuck a lot of times in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s and 70s. They feel stuck.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should ever feel stuck. There's always a possibility for something, and it just takes a shift. It just takes a step. It just takes doing something different. And it doesn't have to be grandiose, but the balm that can be to your life to just take a step in a different direction, no matter what age you are, is powerful.
All right, we're doing it. It's never too late to dream again. It is time, because there are
it.
so many stories, and we run across them, and it's like, somebody asked me that like about a year ago. They go, why don't you start something and just start showcasing all these stories? Because I think if people could hear it and hear more and more, they wouldn't be sitting in doom and gloom, sitting there going, well, now I'm a half a century. I guess it's too late now. I've already, I've done everything I should do, and just, wither away. So, oh boy, we have, that's a whole nother conversation. Get ready. We're going to talk.
Just as you are in the corporate world, and just, knowing about demographics of our country, and, we have a country that's, largely above 50, and so that's, those people need to be spoken to and feel relevant and have outlets to know, hey, it's not over.
Totally. It's not over. I love, oh, look at us. Okay. Since I totally skipped over I started to tell people how to get in touch with you. All right. Tell people, if they want to know more about you, how do they find out about your company, anything?
I have a landing page right now. My site's under construction. I had a super server crash.
Oh no.
And so I had to just throw up a landing page, but my website is that's 4eyesmedia.com. And there's a contact page there that you can get in touch with me there.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Laura. Loved having you.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure. And it was such a pleasure interviewing you for my podcast too. And I'm excited for our listeners to get to hear you there.
Yeah, that'll be out in January sometime, right? I think.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, love. Well, have a wonderful, blessed day. Thank you.
You too.
Bye. Thank you for joining me for another awesome celebration of you. If you were inspired by this story, please share it with your family and friends and hashtag Your Story Matters. I'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment on iTunes. And absolutely, please come to my website, hollydowling.com. Leave a comment there too, and while you're there, pick up your free gift. Most importantly though, just remember that your life is a gift from God. What you do with it is your gift back.